What's up guys, it's Eli and welcome back to the channel for another video. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to properly pen a stereo track in Logic. Alright, so before we jump into penning a stereo track in Logic, let's talk about the difference between a mono signal and a stereo signal. Yes, I know Dolby Atmos is the talk of the town right now, but for this video, we're going to stick to stereo as that is the kind of setup I have. All right, so what is the difference between a mono signal and a stereo signal? All right, so for a mono signal, like a vocal, for example, is one channel, right? You have one channel of information and that is being distributed to wherever you want to send it to. In a stereo system, that's your two speakers or your headphones, whatever you're monitoring through. Think of it this way. You have two speakers and one source of information. And that one source of information is being sent to both speakers equally, right? I like to picture having two separate faders that controls how loud the signal is being sent to each of my speakers, right? So to pin that signal, essentially what you're doing is turning down one of those speakers so you can hear it more than the other one. For example, if you're trying to pin your vocal to your left speaker, you're essentially turning down the right speaker so you can hear the vocal only coming out of the left speaker. I'm picturing that I have two faders. One is sending that vocal to the left speaker and one is sending it to the right speaker, right? So when you are taking the pen knob and you're turning it left to send that vocal to the left speaker, you are essentially taking the fader for the right speaker and you're turning that down. That's why you only hear the vocal now only playing on the left speaker. Vice versa, if you want to send it to the right speaker, same thing. As you turn the knob, the penning knob to the right, you are essentially turning down the fader that's supposed to send it to the left speaker. A stereo signal, on the other hand, is two channels, right? You have two channels of information. One channel is handling everything that's happening on the left and one channel is handling everything that's happening on the right. Now let's take a piano, like a grand piano, for example. To record a grand piano, typically you'd have two microphones, one on the left side and one on the right side. The left side microphone is picking up mostly what's coming from the left, the bass notes, and the right side microphone is picking up mostly what's coming from the right side or your high notes. But really, each microphone is picking up the entirety of the piano. It's not like you're not gonna hear any bass on the right speaker or any high notes on the left speaker. You will actually hear all on both microphones. It's just one is more focused on certain notes and the other one is focused on the others, right? Right side microphone focus more on the high notes and the left side microphone focus more on the low notes. But if you were to mute the right side microphone, it's not like you're not gonna hear any high notes. You're gonna hear the entire piano. Keeping that into consideration, we're gonna apply the same penning principle that we did for the vocal to the piano, right? Now, you remember on the vocal, we are essentially turning down the fader that sends that vocal to one of the speakers so you can only hear it on the other speaker. Keeping that in mind, when you are penning a stereo signal like a piano, you are turning down one of those faders, meaning only the other speaker is playing. You're still hearing the entire range of the piano. Applying the same principle of penning that we use on the vocal to a stereo signal like the piano, that's where it doesn't really work, right? Because we are essentially turning down one speaker, letting the other one play. So you're still hearing the entirety of the piano, but it just doesn't sound right because it was recorded in stereo. So now when you play it, it doesn't sound like it's coming from stereo, right? So you essentially are summing it down to a mono track and you're losing the stereo effect that makes the piano what it is. Let's jump into Logic real quick and we're gonna take a piano and we're gonna apply the same principle of penning that we used on the vocal to that sound. And then we're gonna take a look at penning it the right way. All right, so let's do it. We are currently in Logic and I have this instance of piano opened up. Right. And that is a stereo sound, right? You can hear the high notes coming more from the right speaker and the low notes coming more from the left speaker, right? So we're gonna do the basic penning that Logic opens with by default and see what that does to our sound. And then we're gonna do the stereo penning and see what the difference is, right? So we currently have it opened up and standard penning. You guys should be familiar with this, right? Standard penning. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn it a little bit to the left and let's see what it sounds like. All right, so still have a bit of a stereo effect going on, but it is a lot more narrow than when I first played it. Right, so let's spin it a little bit more. All right, so now we're at 44%. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, so at this point, we are basically losing the entirety of the stereo field, right? So it is mostly a mono signal at this point, where it's only coming out of the left speaker. And we're still not 100% panned yet. So, and we still got more room to go. So let's keep pushing it and see what happens. At this point, it's practically full mono, right? Right, so what basically happened is that we just took the signal and we summed it down to mono, right? You no longer have that stereo field of what the piano sounded like initially, right? So let's reset this real quick, and we're gonna stereo pen it. Right? To open up stereo penning, what you do, you right click on the penning knob and you choose stereo pen, right? It changes the field. So now you see, you clearly have a left channel and a right channel indicated by those little dots here, right? Now, before I even demonstrate the sound real quick, when I play it, it's not like some sound are coming all the way from the right and all the way from the left. It's a stereo field, meaning it's just a little bit wide, right? It's not as narrow as a mono signal would be, straight like this. It's just a little bit more wide, right? So some sounds are coming more from the right speaker and some more from the left speaker, but overall, all the sound is coming from both speakers, right? Keep that in mind, right? So the stereo penning, in theory, what it should do is take this field, right? This is our piano. This is how wide our piano is. It needs to take this and move it in the direction that you're going, right? So if we're going left, it needs to take this and just move it left, right? And if we're going right, it needs to take this and move it right. So essentially, you're still retaining the stereo effect of the piano, just more coming from one speaker. So both speakers are still involved in playing the sound. It's just more on one speaker versus being on both speakers like it initially was. All right, so if I take this sound now, gonna pin it a little bit to the left, and we're gonna play it and see what happens. Right, so the stereo field is still there. It's just moving more to the left. Let's go a little bit further left. All right, so stereo field still here. Yes, I can collapse it all the way down to a mono signal if I continue penning it more. For example, if I do a hard pen, I can, now it's gonna sound more like a mono signal because it's literally coming out of one speaker. And even then, it still sounded more full than when I did the normal penning and did the hard pen. With the stereo penning, you're essentially keeping the stereo image of your sound. You're not collapsing it down to mono, unless you are doing like a hard pen, right? So I just moved it a little bit to the right. So should still sound stereo, just more to the right speaker, right? That is pretty much what stereo penning does. I've been guilty of using just the normal balance penning or the mono penning when I'm working on tracks. And sometimes what you find happens is when you collapsing your stereo signal like that, what you started with is not what you end up with. You start working on a track and it sounds full when you start bringing out all the instruments, and then you start penning and you will start losing some of the meat of that sound, right? Everything is starting to sound a little bit thin, and you just don't know what happened because you didn't really change anything about the sound except for the penning. But that is why. Now you know why if you ever pen your signal and it just sounds a lot more thin versus what you started out with, right? It's because you are essentially doing a mono penning to a stereo signal, right? So you're not keeping that stereo image, you're collapsing it down to a mono signal. I hope you found this video to be useful, and if you learned anything, make sure to drop a like and comment down below to show support to this channel. And if you are new, don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. And if you'd like to support the channel, our Amazon affiliate link is going to be down in the description. Be sure to use it. You can use it to cop some musical instruments, or you can use it to buy pretty much just whatever you want. It's not going to cost you anything extra, but what you purchase, we will get a small commission off of that, and that will be reinvested back into the channel to bring you more videos. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.